Hey, this is Al McGhee with your entertainment ticket. I'm here at the Parker Playhouse in Fort Lauderdale, but I'm here with a man I really admire. His work has been the best I've ever seen as far as documentary films and history of America. I'm here with Ken Burns. Welcome.
Thank you so much. What a nice thing to say. We've tried to tell a complicated version of American history that includes everybody.
Exactly.
And that's the kind of history we've wanted to tell.
Yeah. Well, you're here tonight to show a little bit of your new one called Prohibition. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's a three-part, nearly 6-hour history that'll be shown on PBS starting this October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th that tells the story of this incredible amendment to our Constitution which prohibited the manufacture, sale, and distribution of intoxicating beverages. The 18th Amendment to the Constitution, the only amendment that restricts human freedom, and the only one that's been repealed. Another way to look at it is to say, well, I've been working for many years on a film about single-issue political campaigns that metastasize with horrible unintended consequences, about the demonization of immigrants and African Americans, about smear campaigns against Democratic presidential candidates, about a whole group of people who feel like they've lost control of the country and want to take it back. You'd say, my goodness, you've stopped history, you're talking about now. But these are only a handful of the issues that the story of Prohibition, a fascinating story that we back up and tell from 1820 up to 1920 when it went into effect, and then 2 more episodes that cover the next 13, 14 years when Prohibition was, before Prohibition was finally repealed.
Yeah, I think I feel that the general audience only think of Prohibition with gangsters and things like that.
Well, it's funny, you know, we're here at this playhouse and they've got flappers, gals dressed as flappers, short skirts, bobbed hair, and they've got some Model Ts out front. And we do think of our image, it seems to me, as that flapper shaking her behind, or the Model Ts careening around rain-slick Chicago streets with the Tommy guns blasting. And we've got that. That's part of the story. But we're saying it's a lot more deeper than that.
Yes,
and you know, you've just stepped into the kiddie end of the pool. Now you come over with me to the deep end, and let's get into some stuff. You'll still have all of that. We got Al Capone, and we've got Danger, and it's very sexy film. But there's some other really interesting issues that resonate with today. Like the Bible says, like Ecclesiastes says, there is nothing new under the sun.
You're absolutely right about that. Now, I know you're telling this story, but what message you think the audience will get out of, or what message you trying to portray about Prohibition?
Well, first of all, I think it's really the biggest one is the law of unintended consequences. We don't want to be hypocritical about the laws that we pass. But beyond that, I don't want to score any political points. I'm in the business of telling a fair, honest, balanced history. Now, balance doesn't mean boring, and history doesn't mean homework. So if we can pull out the sense that it has to be sort of boringly balanced and it has to somehow be something you have to memorize because there'll be a test tomorrow, you can put that out of your mind. But I am interested in telling an exciting history. I want people to go, wow, I didn't know that. Or, boy, that's just like today. And go, whoa, isn't that just sort of like what the Tea Party's saying right now? Or isn't that just like, you know, when we got angry at the French because they wouldn't join the coalition with Iraq, we stopped calling French fries, we called them freedom fries. Well, when we didn't like the Germans around World War I and hated the German brewers, we changed sauerkraut to Liberty cabbage. So you go, wait a second, there's nothing new under the sun. And that's an important part. Plus, this is also the story of the jazz age. This post-World War I, we got a soundtrack second to none that's going to make people shake their behinds. It's going to fuel this incredibly dramatic resistance movement in which this law intended quite sincerely to try to stop an evil, that is the perils of drinking. You know, drunkenness was a huge problem in American life, as it always is. But the idea was to take a problem that 10% of the population suffers from and apply it to 100% of the people wasn't going to work. So you made half the country lawbreakers, and jazz, alcohol, all of this stuff becomes the fuel for this new counterculture in a way. So the women who helped pass Prohibition were shocked at their daughters' behaviors as they bobbed their hair and their shirts got shorter and they, you know, got on the tabletops and got drunk. And here's another unintended consequence. Female alcoholism was nearly non-existent when Prohibition began.
Really?
When Prohibition ended, It was a huge social problem, as it is for men and always has been for men, because women didn't have access to alcohol. Very rich women drank discreetly at parties for the rich, some prostitutes in the saloons, but everybody else, women just didn't have access to alcohol. But in Prohibition, when alcohol was outlawed, they had plenty of access to it because the speakeasies were unregulated. So did kids. And what they drank, people just made up all these concoctions, and a lot of it killed people. So, you know, this idea that we're going to save people from the perils of drinking just turned into this horrible mistake in which we made half the country lawbreakers, and we killed a lot of people accidentally through these horrible concoctions, and we ended up having kids and women exposed to it too. And so we multiplied our problems in some ways.
And look at today, how the problems are not just with alcohol now, as drugs and things like that too, the access.
You know, there's an obvious sort of parallel, but then there's obvious differences. Alcohol's been around for millennia. Every culture has it. Every culture knows how to brew, you know, how to ferment or distill alcoholic beverages. But not every culture has drugs. And so drugs are a subcultural event. So if you want to make it a direct equation, say let's legalize cocaine or marijuana or whatever it is, heroin, it's not the same leap that you can make with, you know what, this prohibition law is wrong, let's go back to having this, and we'll figure out other ways to deal with alcoholism. Strengthen drunk driving laws, which we've done, and brought down the number of deaths that way. You know, Alcoholics Anonymous was founded in the couple of years after Prohibition was repealed and has been helpful to a number of people to do that. Other kinds of rehabilitation programs that we've had, and we still haven't gotten rid of it, and no country has. There's always going to be people who are going to be susceptible to addiction and to the addictive power of alcohol. Whether we can directly apply all the lessons we've learned to drugs is another thing, but it's a debate we should be happening. And I hope that among the things that this film does is it says let's have a measured and thoughtful debate about that.
Now, how long did it take you to film this? And also, did you get a chance to talk to anyone who lived during that time? It's in your documentary.
What's great about that is that Prohibition's still within the lifespan of some older folks, and so we interviewed many people from the period. Mostly were kids, but could remember, sometimes college kids could remember what it was like during that period. And there's some really nice remembrances that are sprinkled throughout this history. You know, we've got a lot of historians that talk about it, not boringly. They're very wonderful historians. We found some rare and never before seen footage and photographs that make it come alive, and as such, these take many years to work. So we've been working on it for a little bit more than 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's what we like to do. It's not the only thing I'm working on, but it's the only thing a few people are working on, and I can come back to that, and I can be promoting one film, come back in the editing room on this. Now this film is done and we're out promoting it. Meanwhile, I'm editing another film, beginning to edit another film, shooting a couple of others, and planning and raising money for everything. So, you know, it's sort of like an AWACS plane or a air traffic controller.
Yeah. Wow. This is going to be great. I'm really glad to be part of it and also to have you here. Just one more question. Now, you're one of the best filmmakers I feel we have in America, but how did you get started and why did you get started?
You know, it's always personal what happens. You know, if you wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or even a feature filmmaker in Hollywood, I could tell you what career path to take. But every documentary filmmaker that I know has come to it from very individual reasons. My mom died when I was 11, and my dad, I never saw him cry, but afterwards we were at a movie, and I watched him cry about a year after my mom died, and I suddenly realized instantly, like this light bulb went off, this is a powerful medium. And right then when I was 12, I said, I wanted to be a filmmaker. Now at the beginning I wanted to be a feature filmmaker, you know, Hollywood director.
Of course.
But then a lot of my teachers in college reminded me that there's much more drama in what is and what was than in anything the human imagination can dream up. And so much of our history, something I'm not trained in, but I'm drawn to. I like stories, I like finding out. A lot of our history has been misrepresented. You know, if you think about the Civil War, I made a documentary on the Civil War, you know, they would have you believe all the other ones, you know, Birth of a Nation, Gone with the Wind, other documentaries with that, say African Americans were passive bystanders to the struggle, when in fact they were active, dedicated, self-sacrificing soldiers in this intensely personal drama of self-liberation. It's one of the best stories I know, and nobody told that. Now the problem is what everybody else, oh, well, we should do a story about black soldiers. soldiers. And what they do is they segregate an African-American narrative, and it's politically correct, and you put it in February, the shortest and coldest month, and as if it's some, on the outer reaches of Pluto, when I think, in fact, African-American history is at the burning center of American life. Because when Thomas Jefferson wrote our creed, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, nobody noticed, and most importantly, he didn't notice, that he owned more than 100 human beings, never saw the contradiction, never saw the hypocrisy, and more importantly, never saw fit in his lifetime to free any of those people. So he set in motion an American narrative that is constantly dealing with race. And if you don't deal with it, then you're not dealing with American history. So all of my films, we deal with race. We don't go looking for it. It's just there. You want to talk about boxing? It's Jack Johnson. You want to talk about jazz, the only art form we've created? Well, guess where it was born? It was born in a community that had the peculiar experience of being unfree in a free land. Boy, you got to improvise a hell of a lot more than everybody else if that's your circumstance. What about baseball? Another big subject. What's the baseball's finest moment? Well, if you call it a national pastime, how can it be the national pastime if you've systematically excluded for decades and decades African Americans? So when Jackie Robinson comes up, that's baseball's finest moment. We want to tell that story. So on and on and on, we're trying to tell an inclusive version of American history and not take different people's stories and move it outside and segregate it, but to integrate everybody's story into a whole. And that's the way you make a better history.
And you do it. You do it very well.
Thank
you make a better history. And like I said, I'm very compelled when I see your documentaries about our American history. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate this.
It's my pleasure. It's great to be with you.
This is a day I'll never forget.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be with you, and all I can say is stay tuned. We got lots of good shows coming up, and I think we've tried to say that for too long we've told a top-down version of American history. It's time we tell a bottom-up in which everybody's story counts as equal. American history isn't just the story of presidential administrations punctuated by wars. It's the story of every so-called ordinary person. I say so-called is because once you scratch the surface, you realize there are no ordinary lives. And that's the kind of history that we think should be told.
You're absolutely right, and that's very compelling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take it easy.